plan to withdraw from the NAFTA agreement, which is the North American Free Trade Agreement. Now, today is December 3rd, 2018. Yesterday, when he made his announcement, it was December 2nd, 2018. It says President Trump announced his intention late Saturday to quickly withdraw the United States from the North American Free Trade Agreement, a move intended to force House Democrats to enact a revised version of the pact despite concerns that it fails to protect American workers. I will formally be terminating NAFTA shortly, Mr. Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One en route from the Group of 20 conference in Buenos Aires, a day after appearing at a ceremonial signing of the New Deal with Canada and Mexico. If the president follows through on his threat, congressional leaders will have 6 months to pass the measure. The agreement has been losing support in recent days as Democratic lawmakers ready to take control of the House in January reckon with fallout from the announcement last week that General Motors was planning to idle 5 plants in North America. Now, here is the impact that this NAFTA agreement, or if Donald Trump withdraws from NAFTA agreement, as I've said many times before, the direct economical impact that NAFTA has had in Puerto Rico can be traced all the way back to the birth of the NAFTA agreement and even a year prior to that. All we have to do is go online and type in Puerto Rico's economy. Once we type that in, we can go ahead and go to topuertorico.org, Puerto Rico's economy, and we can basically find an epitomized version of Puerto Rico's economic or microeconomic history. Now, let's bypass a lot of this right here, which evolves around the agricultural history of Puerto Rico, Spanish-American War, agricultural production, Puerto Rico's economic activity, and then right here by 1940s when Operation Bootstrap was launched, and then in 1976, Section 936 of the Internal Revenue Code was established, which of course helped encourage a lot of U.S. companies to go to Puerto Rico, to invest in Puerto Rico, because it was allowing them to send money back to the United States mainland corporations and companies without paying toll fee or federal taxes. By 1993, President Clinton utilized the same tax code in order to wipe away the federal debt. So he ended up reversing Section 936 of the U.S. tax code that applied to Puerto Rico's Operation Bootstrap, and he replaced it with Section 30A. What ended up happening immediately after that was, of course, that Puerto Rico ended up losing an estimated 100,000 jobs plus on that first year, plus indirectly an additional 200,000 jobs. So in general, it led to almost 500 to 600,000 jobs in less than a year in Puerto Rico. This was in 1992, from 1992 to 1993. Now, by the time 1993 came in, immediately after he reversed Puerto Rico's tax code, he ended up signing into play the NAFTA agreement. As it states right here, which basically gave Canada and Mexico an advantage in certain areas of trade agreements and over on Puerto Rico, even though Puerto Rico was a U.S. territory. So you see, because of the simple reason that the NAFTA agreement contributed to the further decline of Puerto Rico's economic activity, then we can directly correlate the NAFTA agreement to the implication that it had on Puerto Rico because of competition for jobs and investment. And although now this right here is a little biased and prejudicial because it claims that although wage levels are low in Mexico, Section 38 gives companies in Puerto Rico an advantage in pharmaceuticals and high-tech industries. This is a lie because of the simple reason that we ourselves are witnesses to the fact that a lot of United States mainland companies, such as Ford and a lot of car manufacturing companies, are actually going to Mexico because ultimately, even though 38 is supposed to give Puerto Rico an advantage in pharmaceutical and high industry, ultimately it still gives Mexico an advantage in capital and investment because they offer lower wages. And this in itself is appealing to a lot of U.S. companies and corporations. Now, if the United States were to drop out of the NAFTA agreement, then ultimately this could automatically lead Puerto Rico to getting back on track and following through with where it left off at as far as Puerto Rico's economic activity. Another thing that people need to start championing for is we need to begin creating committees to establish a group lobbying for Puerto Rico to become exempt from something known as the Jones Act. Because of the stranglehold that the Jones Act has had on Puerto Rico, not only economically, but how it affects Puerto Rico's import and export relations, how it also affects Puerto Rico's ability to receive assistance when faced with a natural disaster, such as what happened during Hurricane Maria. Now, if you look right here, it even tells you there's a direct correlation between the Jones Act and how quickly or efficiently Puerto Rico was able to get help in Puerto Rico, because of the simple reason that the Jones Act renders Puerto Rico not only a domestic territory and trading partner, but also a foreign ally and trading partner, which means that Puerto Rico follows two systems of trading that are governed ultimately by the Jones Act. One of those major factors that ultimately contributes to the price fluctuation for the products that are being produced in Puerto Rico is the fact that Puerto Rico cannot import or export products unless they are brought in or brought out by ships that are American made and American driven and American built. Now, the concept of this law, of course, is obsolete because it comes off as, even though it comes off as pro-Americanist, is also kind of prejudicial because Puerto Rico is not an incorporated territory of the United States. This automatically, you'll be able to find language that excludes Puerto Ricans from participating in the import or export of their own merchandises. Now, the Jones Act is an obscure centuries-old law that requires all goods ferried between U.S. ports to be carried on ships built, owned, and operated by Americans, as I said before. Now, critics say it's making it difficult to get critical supplies into Puerto Rico. The Jones Act, when it was established in 1920, was meant to promote shipping by U.S.-owned and operated vessels. But it's also had the unintended consequences of making it twice as expensive to ship things from the U.S. mainland to Puerto Rico as it is to ship from any other foreign port in the entire world. Now think about that. Twice as expensive for a United States, American, unincorporated territory to import from what maybe 120 nautical miles away to the United States in comparison to other countries that ship from port to port halfway around the world and still are paying 2 times less. So this in effect ends up affecting Puerto Rico's economy, because now if we go ahead and we research economy in relations to Puerto Rico and the Jones Act, we get a completely different result. Now, let me see. The Jones Act opinion. Would repealing the Jones Act help Puerto Rico? Let's see what the New York Times has to say. If not, I'll just make a direct correlation between some lobbying that John McCain did on October of 2017, 1 month before Hurricane Maria struck Puerto Rico, where John McCain asked Congress to please exempt Puerto Rico from the Jones Act, understanding that because Puerto Rico falls under the partnership of agreement of both a domestic and foreign entity, then that would complicate things were Puerto Rico hit by the devastating Category 5 Hurricane Maria. Now, it says right here, it wasn't long after Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico that attention turned into a centuries-old shipping law. A group of lawmakers urged the Trump administration to suspend the law known as the Jones Act for 1 year to expand access to oil, food, and other supplies. The administration granted a 10-day waiver, but declined to renew it, arguing that it wasn't necessary for humanitarian relief. This was made by General Mathis, by the way, not Donald Trump himself, who is the one that made the call and said that Puerto Rico was no longer in a certain category, I guess, to necessitate or call for certain laws to become more pliable for them. Now let's go back so that we can corroborate something that I have said already. Now, Puerto Rico, okay, so now we'll type in Jones Act, Puerto Rico, John McCain, and this is what we get right here. John McCain. See, a lot of people hate John McCain, but I like John McCain because out of all the Republicans and out of all the conservatives, John McCain was the only one that continued to lobby for Puerto Rico and asked for certain laws and bills to be killed in order to help Puerto Rico recover. Not only that, but to alleviate the economical burdens that Puerto Rico is going to be faced with after something as horrible as their ports being destroyed by a Category 5 storm. Now, Republican Senators John McCain and Mike Lee introduced the bill on Thursday, which, like I said before, Puerto Rico got hit on October, right? And this was when? This was September. So like I said, 1 month before Puerto Rico ended up getting hit by Hurricane Maria, Category 5, John McCain and Mike Lee introduced a bill on Thursday to permanently waive shipping restrictions on Puerto Rico. They wanted it permanently waived, saying a temporary waiver from the Trump administration is insufficient to help the island rebuild from Hurricane Maria. Now, the reason I wanted to show you guys this is because I wanted to highlight something important, and that's this: that as long as we continue to, as Puerto Ricans, focus on all the wrong things and not focus on things that as Puerto Ricans we should be organizing in favor of and lobbying in favor of, as long as we continue to allow ourselves to be distracted by the identity movement mongering, by the race baiting, by the fear mongering, and we allow ourselves to deviate from what it is that we should be championing for what it is that we should be organizing to lobby for, such as permanently exempting Puerto Rico from the Jones Act. You don't even understand the impact that this will have on Puerto Rico. Do you know that Puerto Rico's economy stopped growing in Puerto Rico's economy stopped growing, I believe, in 1996, which is ironic because it falls exactly in line with with exactly about the same time when Bill Clinton ended up reversing tax code 936 and turning it into tax code 38. And like it states right here. And which once allowed companies to claim 60% of wages and capital investments as non-taxable income. Now, after he reversed that, what it ended up doing in essence was charging these U.S. companies and corporations 60% in taxes. So what that means now is discouraging U.S. companies and corporations from staying in Puerto Rico and encouraging them to leave to Puerto Rico only for you to later on deploy the NAFTA agreement, which basically gave Puerto Rico and they gave Canada and Mexico an advantage on Puerto Rico. Now, if you notice right here, in 1996, Congress opted to phase out Section 936 by the year 2006. Says it right there. Now, I don't believe in coincidences. Now, if you look at, because I use different references, because you find scattered information everywhere. So if you go ahead and look at economy of Puerto Rico, you can probably find that in 2006 was the last time that Puerto Rico was actually economically active. From 2006, Puerto Rico hasn't been able to establish an economy because they've been experiencing an economic depression. Now, like I said before, I talk with facts. At the microeconomic level, Puerto Rico has been experiencing an economic depression for 12 consecutive years. Now, if you track 12 consecutive years backwards, then it tells you that 12 consecutive years backwards will lead you exactly to 1994, one year after Bill Clinton, the Democrat, ended up reversing tax code 936 and placing tax code 830, destroying more than 300 jobs, which in 2 years led to 500,000 jobs, which if you divide those 500,000 jobs by the fact that there are only 3 million Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico, then you can come to the same number that I came to. That 1/5 out of the entire Puerto Rican population lost their jobs, and in less than 25 years since the NAFTA agreement has been established, Puerto Ricans now have the highest unemployment rate in the entire U.S. Region, all the way up to 14%. So we have to ask ourselves, is it because Puerto Ricans are lazy? No. Puerto Ricans were fruitful. Puerto Ricans were fruitful. If we think about the fact that Puerto Rico rose, Puerto Rico was established as a high economy region by the World Bank. I believe it was in less than 20 years. Okay, I guess it's right here after all. Okay, so it says right here, the economy of Puerto Rico is classified as a high income economy by the World Bank, which basically means that Puerto Rico jumped from being a third world region or a third world country to a one world region or one world economy that basically outproduced many major countries, including the country that Puerto Rico was once colonized by, Spain. So Puerto Rico can be extremely productive if we understand what affected Puerto Rico. Now, if you notice right here, It says compared to Latin America, Puerto Rico has the highest GDP per capita in the region. In the region, as well as being the most competitive economy among Ibero-American states, surpassing Chile and Spain. The Commonwealth has a massive bond debt that is unable to service, 70 billion in early 2017 and 12,000 per capita. Now, this came out of some bogus stocks that were sold to the people of Puerto Rico, and whom, by the way, became the victims of stockholders in the United States mainland, who kept investors in Puerto Rico in the dark as far as how the stocks and bonds were performing, whom 100% of investors in Puerto Rico had invested in because of the promotion that it had received. So it's a whole bunch of different factors that ultimately contributed to the destruction of Puerto Rico. But this is not something that should make you feel down. This is something that should encourage you to say, oh, well, now I understand what it is that destroyed Puerto Rico. And by understanding what it is that destroyed Puerto Rico, we can now understand what direction we need to head in order for us to begin to champion for something that is going to be significant for the future of Puerto Rico as United States citizens, if you truly do care, not only about the people of Puerto Rico, but about how their economical stability ultimately trickles down to U.S. taxpayers. Because if they allowed Puerto Rico to be self-sufficed and they exempted them from the Jones Act, and they did all these things and allowed Puerto Rico to transition into wind and solar power, then Puerto Rico would progress. But unfortunately, it's these same lawmakers that are preventing Puerto Rico from attaining the votes necessary or the budget to transition from outdated oil-burning electrical generators to solar and turbine powered, which is the future. Because ultimately, Puerto Rico is mountainous. It has a mountainous region, and look, and all they do is that they try to utilize these mainstream news media, who basically lobby for these petrol and coal distributing companies here in the United States, and they try to highlight everything that's bad about renewable energy. Oh, it took a beating. Well, it took a beating once in 15 years since it's been built. Generators in Puerto Rico take a beating every 3 months. Every 3 months, people experience a blackout in Puerto Rico. So, and the only reason Puerto Rico is still using these outdated generators is because of all the lobbying that's done in Puerto Rico against the will and the interests of Puerto Ricans. Let's take into consideration that Puerto Ricans pay more for electricity than any other state in the union. So here we go. So in comparison, if we look at the data, how much does electricity cost in Puerto Rico? You notice that in comparison to Puerto Rico, the United States pays 13.02 cents per kilowatt hour. Puerto Rico, on the other hand, pays 21.24 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, if you think that the abuse stops there, it doesn't. Uh, Puerto Rico also pays more per barrel of petroleum. Why is Puerto Rico burning oil to generate electricity? I'm telling you, we are so outdated. This was in 2014. We are so outdated. And the United States and lobbyists and Puerto Rican lobbyists in Puerto Rico are just lobbying against the interests of the Puerto Rican people. So PREPA, the troubled Puerto Rico Electric Power Authority, is having difficulties coming up with the money to pay for its latest petroleum delivery as Caribbean. So here's the problem. The utility last week decided to take cash from its capital works fund up to $100 million to buy oil. Usually PREPA would use existing lines of credit to make such purchases, but the recent downgrades of Puerto Rico's public debt have made that more challenging. Puerto Rico had... Okay, let's skip all this shit because I want you... There it is. This is what I want you to see. What the F? Why is Puerto Rico buying $100 per barrel of oil to make electricity? Now, let's see how much the United States pays for oil. Look, in some countries, they're paying as low as 67 cents. A barrel of oil in the United States now costs about $67 a barrel. Are you serious? So you're telling me that Puerto Rico pays $300 a barrel, the United States pays $67 a barrel. We pay 2 times more for electricity, and Puerto Rico's minimum wage. Matter of fact, Puerto Rico's average annual income compared to the United States is ridiculous. It's only $20,078, right? Compared to the United States. So we're making $20,000 on average in Puerto Rico. Look at the United States. On average, the median income in the United States is $59,000, 3 times higher. So they're getting paid 3 times more. They're paying 2 times less for electricity, and we're paying 4 times more per barrel of oil. And you know what that's called? That's called the weaponization of legislation. So a legislative war has been declared on Puerto Rico to sustain the people of Puerto Rico in poverty. And that is my conclusion. With that being stated, everybody, stay safe, stay informed.